You wrote the message, then read it back 4 times before sending it. Not because it was unclear, because you were running it past someone. Not a real person, a composite jury of colleagues and strangers, all deciding what you are. You cannot switch them off. In 1759, a Scottish professor named Adam Smith gave that jury a name, the impartial spectator, and built an entire book around it, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. Yes, that Adam Smith, the wealth of nations man. 17 years before he explained self-interest, he explained why self-interest is not the thing actually running you. And his claim is far stranger than anything in economics. You were not born with a conscience that you consult. You assembled an audience out of other people's imagined judgments, installed it inside your own head, and now it sits there as a judge you are not allowed to dismiss. Every flicker of pride, guilt, shame, and ambition you have ever felt is that borrowed audience returning a verdict. Stay with me, because in the next 20 minutes, I want to show you the darkest thing Smith found when he watched how that inner jury actually votes. It does not weigh good against bad. It weighs rich against poor. That reflex, not greed, not money, not ideology, is what he says quietly corrupts moral judgment in every society that has ever existed. And the uncomfortable part is that you are running it right now, on somebody, without noticing. The book is The Theory of Moral Sentiments, published in 1759, and the man who wrote it is the most misunderstood thinker in the modern world. Adam Smith was born in Kirkcaldy, a small Scottish port town, in 1723. He was a professor of moral philosophy at Glasgow, and the book that made him famous in his own lifetime was not the one you have heard of. This one came first. The Wealth of Nations arrived 17 years later, in 1776, and ever since, people who have read neither have used it to argue that Smith thought human beings were walking calculators. He thought nothing of the kind. Understand the world he wrote in, and you understand the book. 18th century Edinburgh and Glasgow were the engine room of the Scottish Enlightenment, a compact, hyper-social world of coffee houses, debating clubs, drawing rooms, dinner tables and theatre boxes, where David Hume was a friend, where everybody of consequence knew everybody, and where your reputation was your entire working capital. It was a society in which you were always being watched, and you knew it. Smith took that experience and turned it into a theory of what a human being is. And he never let the book go. He revised it again and again across 3 decades, and was still rewriting it in 1790, the year he died. On his deathbed, he had most of his unpublished manuscripts burned. But this book he kept working on to the end. That tells you which one he thought was his real work. Here is the whole book in one sentence. Morality, Smith says, is not handed down to you from above, and not worked out by you from first principles. It is assembled out of other people's eyes, and once assembled, it lives inside you as an imaginary spectator whose approval you will spend the rest of your life trying to win. That is the machine, not reason, not commandments, not even self-interest. A permanent internal audience built from the outside in. And once you can see it running, ordinary life looks different. Why criticism from a stranger can wreck your afternoon. Why you rehearse arguments in the shower with someone who is not there. Why doing the right thing when nobody is watching still feels like something. We will walk it in 5 beats. First, the fellow feeling, the strange fact that other people's pain lands in your own body. and why Smith starts there instead of with selfishness. Second, the looking glass. How a child raised alone could never form a moral idea, and why society is the only mirror you have. Third, the impartial spectator. The moment you split into two people, judge and accused, and the man within takes his seat. Fourth, it is the vanity, not the ease. Smith's demolition of why you actually want more money, which is not the reason you tell yourself. And fifth, the corruption. His darkest finding that the same beautiful machinery which makes morality possible also makes us admire the rich and overlook the poor, automatically, without malice, and calls it justice. 5 beats, one enormously kind and enormously clear-eyed Scotsman, and a description of your inner life so accurate it is almost rude. First beat, the fellow feeling. Smith opens by taking the cynic's argument away before the cynic can make it. Here is the very first sentence he published as a moral philosopher. How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it, except the pleasure of seeing it. Notice what he is doing, because it is a clever move. He does not claim that people are good. He grants the cynic everything. Assume man is as selfish as you like, and then points at a fact selfishness cannot explain. You flinch when a stranger slices his thumb. Your stomach drops when someone on a ladder wobbles. You cry at films about people who do not exist. None of that pays you anything. Smith calls this sympathy, but he does not mean pity, and this is where most people misread him. He means something far more mechanical, the imaginative act of changing places. As we have no immediate experience of what other men feel, he writes, we can form no idea of the manner in which they are affected, but by conceiving what we ourselves should feel in the like situation. Though our brother is upon the rack, as long as we ourselves are at our ease, our senses will never inform us of what he suffers. You never actually feel another person's pain. You run a simulation of yourself in their position, and you feel that, which sounds cold until you notice what it implies. The one instrument you have for reaching other people is your imagination, and imagination can be trained or starved. Here is the line to carry out of the first beat. You are not a sealed unit. Something leaks between you and everyone you pass, and every other idea in this book is built on that leak. Second beat, the looking glass. Smith now runs a thought experiment that ought to be more famous than it is. Imagine a human being who grew up entirely alone, with no contact of any kind with other people. He could think, he could feel, but he could no more think about his own character, Smith says, than he could see his own reflection. He would have no more idea of the beauty or deformity of his own mind than he would of the beauty or deformity of his own face. Morality would simply never occur to him, not because he was wicked, because he had no mirror. Bring him into society and everything changes at once. Now other people react to him, and for the first time he has data about himself. Smith's sentence for this is one of the great images in philosophy. We suppose ourselves the spectators of our own behavior and endeavor to imagine what effect it would, in this light, produce upon us. This is the only looking glass by which we can, in some measure, with the eyes of others, scrutinize the propriety of our own conduct. Read that again. The only looking glass. Not one tool among several, the only one. Your entire sense of what kind of person you are was manufactured out of other people's faces. Now think about what your generation did to that mirror. Smith's looking glass was a dinner table and a congregation, maybe 200 faces in a lifetime, most of whom knew you and had reasons to be gentle. Yours is a phone containing 100 million faces, most of whom do not know you, are not being gentle, and are performing for their own mirrors at the same time. Smith would not have said the mirror is bad. He would have asked, very quietly, who is standing in it. The line to carry: you did not choose your reflection, you chose the room. Third beat: the impartial spectator. And this is the beating heart of the book. Because there is an obvious problem with the mirror. If your sense of yourself is built entirely from other people's opinions, you are at the mercy of whoever happens to be in the room. Flattered by fools, crushed by strangers, blown about by whatever the crowd approves of this week. Smith saw that, and his answer is the most original thing in the book. We do not stay dependent on the actual audience, we abstract from it. We soon learn to set up in our own minds a judge between ourselves and those we live with. Not your mother, not your boss, not your followers. A judge. Smith describes the moment with a precision that is almost eerie. When I endeavor to examine my own conduct, when I endeavor to pass sentence upon it, and either to approve or condemn it, it is evident that, in all such cases, I divide myself, as it were, into two persons, and that I, the examiner and judge, represent a different character from that other I, the person whose conduct is examined into and judged of. You split in two. One of you did the thing, the other one watched, and is now summing up. And the one who watches is nobody in particular. Smith calls him an impartial spectator who considers our conduct with the same indifference with which we regard that of other people. Neither father, nor brother, nor friend, merely a man in general. That is your conscience, and Smith's whole point is that it was never issued to you. You built it out of 10,000 remembered glances and then handed it the gavel. And here is why this matters enormously in practice. Smith says the people who never build the judge, who only ever ask what the actual crowd thinks, are, in his exact phrase, necessarily the slaves of the world. The line to carry. The goal is not to stop caring what people think. It is to promote the right spectator to the bench. Fourth beat. It is the vanity, not the ease. Now Smith turns his own instrument on the thing most of us spend our lives chasing, and the result is brutal. Ask yourself honestly why you want more money. Not the first answer, the real one. Smith puts the question in the bluntest terms anyone ever has. For to what purpose is all the toil and bustle of this world? What is the end of avarice and ambition, of the pursuit of wealth, of power and preeminence? Is it to supply the necessities of nature? And then he shrugs. The wages of the meanest laborer can supply them. Food, clothing, a house, a family. So why does anyone want more? Here is his answer, and it should sting. To be observed, to be attended to be taken notice of with sympathy, complacency, and approbation are all the advantages which we can propose to derive from it. It is the vanity, not the ease or the pleasure, which interests us. You do not want the bigger house, you want to be seen in it. Smith puts it in a way no one has improved on. It is because mankind are disposed to sympathize more entirely with our joy than with our sorrow that we make parade of our riches and conceal our poverty. The rich man, he says, glories in his riches because he feels they naturally draw upon him the attention of the world. The poor man is ashamed of his poverty, not because he is cold or hungry, but because obscurity covers him from the daylight of honor and approbation. He goes out and comes in unheeded. That is a 1759 description of the entire attention economy, written before the word economy meant what it means now. Every follower count, every job title said a little too casually, every photograph of a meal. Smith already knew. The line to carry: you are not chasing comfort, you are chasing witnesses. Fifth beat, the corruption. And here Smith stops being charming. Put the machine together. Morality runs on sympathy. Sympathy runs on imagination. And imagination, Smith noticed, is not neutral. It enters far more easily into joy than into misery. We find it delightful to imagine ourselves rich and admired. We find it unbearable to imagine ourselves poor and overlooked, so we look away. Follow that to the end, and you get his darkest sentence. Upon this disposition of mankind, to go along with all the passions of the rich and the powerful, is founded the distinction of ranks and the order of society. Sit with what he is claiming. Hierarchy is not held up mainly by force and not mainly by money. It is held up by sympathy pointed in one direction. Of the rich and the great, Smith says, we desire to serve them for their own sake, without any other recompense but the vanity or the honor of obliging them. And notice what this reflex does to judgment. When the admired do something shabby, we find reasons. When the overlooked do the same thing, we find a character flaw. An unknown person's misfortune registers as a statistic. A celebrity's registers as a tragedy. That is not greed. Nobody profits from it. It is the moral machinery working exactly as designed and producing something no honest person would choose. This is the deepest reason Smith is not the cheerleader for wealth he gets quoted as. The man who explained how markets create prosperity had already explained 17 years earlier how our admiration of the prosperous quietly poisons our sense of right and wrong. The line to carry: your moral compass has a magnet sitting next to it, and the magnet is called status. So what does all of it add up to? Strip away the 18th century sentences, and Smith is telling you one continuous thing, and every beat we walked is a stage of it. You are built to feel other people from the inside. That is the fellow feeling, the leak, the fact selfishness cannot explain. Because of that leak, you learn who you are from their faces. Society is the only looking glass you have. Because a mirror made of real people is unreliable, you abstract one. You divide yourself into two persons and appoint a judge who is merely a man in general, and you spend your life arguing your case in front of him. That is the whole apparatus of conscience, and it is astonishing, and it is also the source of the trouble, because the same imaginative sympathy that lets you build a judge also has a bias baked into it. It enters easily into the lives of the shining and reluctantly into the lives of the obscure. So the tribunal you built to keep you honest is quietly weighted, and it does not weigh good against bad. It weighs admired against overlooked. That is Smith's single idea. Not that people are selfish, and not that people are kind. That people are spectators of each other and of themselves, and that everything decent about us and everything corrupt about us comes out of the same machinery. Which is why this book, and not the more famous one, is where you actually meet Adam Smith. He is the man who noticed, before anyone had the vocabulary for it, that we live our whole lives on a stage we cannot leave, performing for an audience we invented, and that the character of our morality depends entirely on who we let sit in the front row. Here is the one thing to do with this book today, and it takes about 90 seconds. Smith says you cannot stop the inner audience. You can only choose its membership. So find out who is currently on your bench. Think of the last decision you second-guessed, the message you rewrote, the thing you did not say, the purchase you made or did not make. Then ask the only question that matters. Whose face was I imagining? Be specific. Not people in general, a person. Half the time you will find it is somebody you do not even respect, who somehow ended up as the supreme judge of how you spend your one life. Then do the second half, which is harder. Deliberately promote someone better. Pick a real person whose judgment you actually trust, or the version of yourself at 80, or Smith's man in general, the one with no stake in it, and run the decision past them instead. This is not a trick. It is precisely what Smith describes, setting up in your own mind a judge between yourself and those you live with, so that you are not one of those who are, in his phrase, necessarily the slaves of the world. And if you want to do the harder thing this book asks, add one more question and ask it about someone else. When you last judged a person's behavior, would you have judged it the same way if they had been richer, better dressed, better followed? Answer that honestly, and you have caught the magnet in the act. Smith's practical advice was, never be a saint. It was watch yourself watching, and pick your spectator on purpose. Adam Smith spent 30 years revising this book, and was still improving it in the year he died, long after the world had decided he was the man who explained markets. He was really the man who explained audiences. He showed us that we are stitched together out of each other's glances, that conscience is an audience we built, that ambition is a hunger for witnesses, and that the same machinery which makes us capable of decency also makes us bow, automatically and without noticing, to whoever is shining. If this walk through the theory of moral sentiments gave you something worth keeping, subscribe. A new classic every week, faithfully, in about 20 minutes. And that is the season. Thank you for spending it with these books. When we come back, we are starting a brand new season of classics. The same format, a new shelf of the greatest things ever written, and I think the best run we have done. So tell me in the comments before we go, whose face do you actually see when you are deciding whether you have done the right thing? And would you choose that person if you could choose? I read every reply.